issue of immigration is, of course, a very hot topic, and it's pretty much at the forefront of our political, economic, and even our social culture right now. As a historian, I can tell you, though, that a lot of the themes that we talked about today actually have been around for quite a while. In my studies on immigration for what today is the U.S.-Mexico border region, a lot of these themes go back over 100 years. And so one of the things that I'm hoping that today's forum will, the impact that it will have is that it will encourage folks to go home and want to do more research on the historical aspects of immigration for this region.
At the old detention center, they only had a capacity of 450 detainees. At the one in, no women, but at the one in NTC, in Calexico, about 5 miles up the road, they have 700 detainees. So they have more detainees, and I just heard from one of the judges today that they got approved to build another facility next door to that facility. So the new judges, all they're doing is detaining cases, nothing else. And they brought in a judge from San Diego this week to do non-detained cases. They have not been concentrating on non-detained cases for probably 7 years. Some of the cases that I've done this week that I've represented clients for, they haven't had a court before a judge for 7 years.
And I want to focus on the binding precedent from the U.S. Supreme Court in the case of Padilla versus Kentucky. And I know there are a lot of people here today that are students, and there's also a lot of general practitioners that are here. The Padilla case and the decision from the Supreme Court is actually a very interesting, highly readable opinion. And basically what it talks about is that Mr. Padilla, his name is Jose Padilla, was born in 1950 in Honduras. He came to the United States when he was a young man, and he lived in the United States for more than 30 years before he was charged by the Kentucky state courts with the many charges, but one of those charges was transporting marijuana for sale. In the interim 30 years, he served in the United States military. He had a productive, law-abiding life in the state of Kentucky. And so he's charged, he's indicted by the Kentucky courts, and he gets appointed an attorney, and that attorney does what most defense attorneys do. They negotiate cases. And when they negotiate that case, that defense attorney gets a deal that Mr. Padilla is interested in taking, but he actually asks, hey, attorney, I'm a legal permanent resident. Is this going to have consequences for me? And the advice given by that attorney is, no, you should be fine. And you should be fine for a couple of reasons. You've been here for 30 years, you served in the military, and other than this one charge, you have no convictions on your record. So based upon that, Jose Padilla takes a deal, and he signs. That advice from his attorney was terrible, because a transportation of a controlled substance charge almost certainly leads to deportation or removal proceedings, and that's exactly what happened to Jose Padilla.
So as Jason mentioned, one of the most extreme consequences for a criminal conviction can be triggering eligibility to be deported, also known as being eligible to be removed from the United States. That can be, for many people, one of the most important things in a criminal context. I think most people have this handout that I passed out right now. It contains some excerpts from Padilla v. Kentucky, which Jason just referenced, and also some excerpts from California Penal Code 1016.2, which is the code section where Jason mentioned that the California legislature has actually codified the Padilla v. Kentucky decision. And so both that code section, 1016.2, and Padilla v. Kentucky recognize that the immigration consequences for an individual who's being charged with and potentially convicted of a crime can be the most important outcome, the most important priority for that person. I mean, people are facing obviously jail time as part of in criminal context. They're facing jail time, they're facing probation conditions, sometimes they're facing prison time. Even in spite of facing all of those other extreme consequences, in many situations, and in many situations with my own clients, their greatest priority is to protect their status in the United States.
DREAM Act had been introduced numerous times in Congress and never passed, and it's the same population. So people call children that were brought here at a very young age, and they don't have any status. They were brought here very young, the Dreamers. And unfortunately, that, as I indicated, that's been introduced numerous times, but it's never passed. So President Obama was able to issue an executive action, which resulted in DACA.
I was under the impression when you did join the military, even if you were not a U.S. citizen, I thought you automatically became a U.S. citizen. You had enlightened me stating that it's a pathway for citizenship. Once they serve their term and they get honorably discharged, and then they get into a little bit of trouble where, you know, with the law, do you think it's appropriate for the district attorney to take into consideration that they serve their country honorably, with an honorable discharge, where we would do criminal records check, NCIC, to find out if they have any priors, and should that be considered as, you know, a positive input instead of deportation?
A U.S. citizen, they're no longer at risk for deportation. But if what you're asking is, should someone's military service be a factor used in terms of determining punishment they might face, or whether it should be taken in terms of a holistic view of the individual, I think certainly. Imperial County unfortunately doesn't have a dedicated veterans court. Other counties, normally they're larger, have actual dedicated courts where they're able to take those factors into consideration. And really the thrust of those courts are when the offense they're alleged to have committed is somehow related to their military service. The court, as well as the local agency providers, are able to tie in actual services to actually deal with the veteran I think in a very in a collaborative approach towards rehabilitation that factors in their background. And I think it's a great idea. I wish we